When you want to socialize fearful dogs, do your best to avoid any kind of traumatic situations, remembering that the traumatic situation is something that's in the dog's own brain, not yours. If that means that it's traffic, then you have to work under threshold with traffic. Boy, is that hard. Expose the dog to a variety of different situations, and again, under threshold, except sometimes when you can use flooding. And it's funny because in the last week I've actually recommended flooding, I think 3 times, which is a lot for me. And with flooding, with a fearful dog, what that essentially means is you take the dog to some place where they're going to see an awful lot of the thing they're afraid of. So, you know, if you've ever gone to a dog show, there are tons of dogs at dog shows that are very fearful and that act very fearfully when they're at the dog show, when they're not at the dog show, but they're fine at the dog show. It's the elevator syndrome. You know, you have so many bodies in one place that you can't react. So if you have a dog that's fearful of, say, men, like the person who was there earlier today, one of the recommendations was that she go to downtown Moraga, which I don't know that there is a downtown Moraga. Anyway, to someplace where she's going to see a lot of people and walk with her dog. Not having the dog meet the men, not having, you know, there doesn't have to be any socialization with men at all. It's just exposure to men. Tons of exposure to men who are not going to do anything to her. And then very slowly, she will, it's kind of reversed to the normal desensitization. Normally you have them meet one guy very slowly until they like them, and then another guy, and then another guy. But if you're doing with reverse, you have them meet tons and tons and tons, and then you kind of slowly reverse it till they're down to just meeting one person. And with some dogs, that works much better than the other way around. So it's a flooding kind of thing. So again, some dogs have to meet one at a time, some dogs can meet a ton at once. Realize that you may never get to what most people consider normal behavior. So if you're working with a fearful dog, there's your fearful dog, here's your Labrador Retriever, right, or the normal Labrador Retriever. You may get here. And if you're okay with that, then that's cool. But if you're not okay with that, then, you know, don't get that dog. Don't get the fearful dog, and don't assume that you're going to be able to fix it. That's one of the things that we say is the mark of a good dog trainer is not how well they can train a dog, but how well they can choose them. Now, of course, being here, we choose the ones that are problematic. On purpose, of course. We would never do it unpurposefully, but you see what I mean? You're not ever going to get to true normal behavior. And that, any questions? Yes.
When you had the puppies there, they're showing 10, and you had an adult dog in there, how would they react to socialized happy puppies?
Show them socialized happy puppies because we always worry about disease control. They would probably be much better.
More relaxed.
Yeah, much more relaxed than correct. But we couldn't do that. No, we are restricted from doing that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Are alpha dogs less fearful if they're more confident?
I'm sorry?
Are alpha dogs less fearful? They tend to be more assertive and confident. That's why they're alpha, right?
Well, the whole term alpha is so misused. If you have more than one dog, then one dog might be the leader inside and the other dog might be the leader outside. Which one of those is alpha? You know, if you're married and your husband is a boss someplace, or your wife is a boss someplace, and they come home, but you're the boss in the house, who's alpha? Alpha is way more complicated than we make it seem. And even in a wolf pack, the admitted leader of the pack, a lot of times will go, no, I don't want to eat first. That whole thing about eating first, that's so exhausting. All right.
So with those 3 puppies, would they have maybe been a little less fearful if you had separated them and done one-on-one?
No, they would have been actually, they would have been just as fearful, but they would have been more shut down.
Okay.
Now, if we've been on the floor, lying down on the floor, being fairly still, just kind of breathing, then they would come over and visit. But yeah, I think that what would happen then is the dogs, because they didn't have numbers, they wouldn't be barking as much, but they would just be kind of. Yes.
Could you talk a little bit about calming signals and fear? I noticed that some of them were displaying self-soothing behaviors, Is it that some of them don't learn calming signals, or?
Well, a calming signal can be, there are two kinds of calming signals. There's things where dogs will actually calm themselves down, and there are things where dogs are trying to calm another dog down. Most dogs can learn how to calm themselves down, but when they're very afraid, remembering that they are not in their conscious brain, they are not able to actually, do that for themselves. So it takes being able to make an assessment of the situation for them to use either kind. That's why he's so good, because what happens when the calming signals are really cool, because if they work out properly, when he's starting to do these calming signals, when he's walking around the room pretending that there's nobody else there, then the other dog will start mirroring that. And when you see the mirroring, you now are getting, the dog is actually beginning to calm himself down. So a dog like Strider is worth his weight in gold because he can help a dog calm himself down from being afraid. Yes?
Can you talk a bit about arousal and fearfulness? Because that's one thing I really always am questioning, because I find after being in a state of arousal, whether it's from fun or whatever,
Well, a state of arousal, which we talked about, I think it was a brown bag you didn't attend, probably. But arousal, adding arousal to, we probably couldn't for crying out loud. Adding arousal to anything causes the behaviors to worsen dramatically.
But is it just as long as the chemistry? It just takes the 24 hours?
It can take up to 48 hours sometimes for the chemistry to go down. And it takes a long, long time for cortisol to drop. And sometimes it's even like 3 or 4 days. So, and the studies they've done on shelter dogs have shown the cortisol levels are perpetually raised. They never drop to a normal level because the dogs are always in a situation where there's a certain, way too much excitement going on. So arousal, yes, arousal will, if a dog that has, whether it's fear aggression or any other kind of aggression, if a dog goes into arousal because another dog goes after it or because there's something that causes the cortisol levels to rise and the epinephrine to go up, that dog may be 3 hours later presented with another new situation, may aggress, may act out, may bite something, may do something that's totally out of character for the dog because it's still flooded with the chemistry. We are our chemistry. I used to think we were our hormones, but that was back when I was going through menopause. Yeah.
Do dogs dream? Or
Yes, of course they dream.
Do they
Of course they dream. Yeah, sure.
And cats do?
Yeah. There's no reason to think that they don't do all kinds of things that we do. They just don't talk about it as much.
So their dreams are like pictures are
They think in pictures, okay? So if a dog thinks in pictures because they don't have any language, then it would stand to reason that their dreams would be in pictures too. And I was actually noticing, it's a good point, because I was noticing that when I listen to a book, I think in pictures far more than if I'm reading it. So you know that we can dream in pictures or not, So it is, we have the capacity to do that, but remember, the reptilian brain is the lowest brain. The mammalian brain is a pretty darn sophisticated thing. It's just topped by ours. That's all. So, they have an awful lot of things that we have, they have. And we have to remember that, because I think it's really important. Especially it's important for people who are not dog people, who are not animal people, because somehow they think that another species is like something that comes from another planet. They don't get that we have a lot in common. They don't get that at all. And we have more in common than we have not in common. So I think it's important for all of us to remember that. One more and that's it. Yes?
When you said that not to expect the dog to ever get to normal, would it be more likely to get closer to normal if it's a dog that had a really good temperament as a puppy, at 2 years old, all of a sudden developed fear? You try to work on helping the dog with that fear?
Yeah, the question was just if the dog had an otherwise normal childhood, and then had a trauma at the age of 2, are you more likely to make it further? Yes, you are. The older the dog is, when it has the trauma and becomes fearful, the more likely they are to be completely recoverable. The younger they are, when they have the traumatic event, the less likely they are to be able to get over to override it. Okie dokie. Thank you very much.